Hi, everyone. I'm Srinivasa Mahendrakar. I'm a technical lead at BizTalk 360, primarily responsible for delivering the feature sets for a couple of products, primarily on BizTalk 360. Today, I have a privilege to introduce two distinguished speakers, Vladimir Vinogradsky and Matthew Farmer. I hope I pronounced it correctly. So it's Vladimir Vinogradsky was working for a company called Epiphany, who are building a cloud-based API management solution. And with the acquisition with Microsoft, he joined Microsoft 5 years ago. And currently, he is leading Azure API Management team, Azure API Management team in program management area. And Matt, he is, again, a program manager at Azure API Management team, and he comes from Microsoft consulting background. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vladimir and Matt onto the stage.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about API management. By the way, how many of you actually use API management or heard of API management? Not too many, I'd say a third. So this will be your opportunity to find out a little bit about how we view API management and sort of the place that we feel the product has in the integration portfolio. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some recently released features since last Integrate in the past 12 months. And then we'll highlight some of them in the demo. We're going to talk a little bit about the future and just tell you some of the things that we'll plan on working on in the next 6-12 months. And we'll wrap up with some useful links, and that will be it. So we're done. Without further ado, let's begin. So we'll start with a simple question. You can just shout the answer. It's pretty obvious, right? Exactly, right? So all these things are actually enabled and made successful by APIs, right? And it's pretty self-explanatory. Any mobile app out there uses at least several APIs to be useful. Intelligent assistants like Cortana, Alexa, etc. They are predicated on APIs, and the extensibility model is APIs, right? Similar thing with software as a service applications that now are, sort of experience huge adoption in the enterprise. Nobody would adopt them if you cannot access and integrate with them via APIs, and on and on. So APIs are pretty critical. So I snapped these pictures from a few online websites, just simple search. You can find them on Business Insider, India Today, and some others. Links are in the slides when you get them. So you probably recognize Tim Cook and Satya Nadella. They are both CEOs of Apple and Microsoft, respectively. Beside them are aspiring developers, the youngest and not so youngest, right? And you may say, well, these are outliers, and it's true, right? They are probably exceptional kids, and each has an interesting story and at least a few apps to their name. The guy in the white, with the white border, the picture, I actually happened to know him. He went to the same class as my daughter in middle school. So he built a bunch of apps, but his latest app keeps you on time and alerts you when it's time to leave for your appointment, based on traffic and such, of course, using APIs. So not so subtle point here is that even non-professionals, so hobbyists, aspiring developers, can build very useful applications by leveraging APIs. Why? Because essentially, if you think about it, complexity resides in APIs. The rest essentially is just presentation and orchestration, right? All the persistence, all the complicated compute and processing, all the intelligence, as Jim was showing today in the morning, right? And you saw in the demos throughout the day, resides in these endpoints. And really, you probably heard of this digital transformation or two-speed IT movement or idea or trend. And really, what it's predicated upon is APIs should sort of realize that and expose the value that they have as APIs, and then that value will be easily realized without too much fuss and expense by applications. And applications in the broad sense, of course, it could be mobile apps, websites, it could be service-to-service apps, et cetera, right? So we believe that APIs are essentially at the center of this digital transformation that more and more organizations these days are undergoing. And we sort of feel it every day because we see a lot more customers every day coming to us with questions and interested in API management. And of course, Gartner seems to agree with us, which of course makes it true. So moving forward, realizing that, right, that digital transformation in my simple mind is essentially expose APIs, right? So we have a product, right, that allows you, or organizations really, to expose the APIs, enable their consumption, and create this virtual cycle, right, of APIs and applications, because that's where the value is created. That's where, as Jim was saying today, your customers, your profits, your new initiatives come in. So the product, API management product, is in the middle. So on the right side, you see API managers and API developers. These guys build and publish and manage APIs. These APIs could be, exposing raw sort of critical systems. They can expose important, sophisticated business processes. They can be custom tailored for particular user experiences, right? For building applications. Doesn't matter. They can be in the cloud. They can be in Azure. They can be outside. On that side, right, the critical important things are ability for these managers and developers to create abstractions of the APIs, to protect and secure them, to monitor and operate them, to analyze how they are being used, and those kind of capabilities API management provides over there. On the opposite side, application developers can easily now reach into the value of the enterprise assets and build applications quickly at low cost to fulfill small or bigger needs. On that side, essentially, the important capabilities that API management provides are discovery, ability for developers to understand how to use APIs using interactive reference, make first successful call in seconds without writing a line of code, download some assets that will help them to get started really quickly, scripts or snippets rather of code or client SDKs, and also understand their usage of APIs as well and manage their keys and access. Now, when these wonderful applications are built, they start sort of realizing, end users start using them. That's where the value sort of gets created and delivered, right, for the enterprise. And that's where API Management Gateway is hard at work. It serves as a single front door to all your backend APIs, right? Gives you unprecedented opportunity to secure, protect, screen, and measure access to the backends, as well as optimize latency by using caching, et cetera, right? So that's in a nutshell is our product, and these are the capabilities that we're striving to provide. So switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the progress from the last integrate. So this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm going to highlight just a few items, but this is just for you to sort of appreciate what changed since last year. So SOAP and SOAP to REST, we're going to demo it today. And you've probably seen some demos in talks before us. Obviously, it's very important, highly demanded feature. It expands the range of APIs that can be used with API management and participate in this virtual cycle. So really important feature. We added robust support for VNets. And doing that unlocked a number of hybrid scenarios where organizations can expose securely their on-prem and cloud APIs. And that feature is extremely popular. More than half of our high-end customers are actually using VNets. Admin UI in Azure was a huge undertaking. We are close to being done with that. And we are supremely excited about, basically appearing, lighting up in Azure Portal for several reasons. First of all, that's where all the eyes are of people in Azure, right, of developers and managers in Azure. So it makes our product a lot more discoverable, but also makes management of APIs consistent, with the rest of Azure. And you're going to see a lot more investment in the future in improving the experience there. We're very excited about that. Integrations with apps, now you can import logic apps and function apps as entities rather than, fiddle with URLs and keys and things of that nature. This is great. And then, lastly, we expanded API management into design phase of API lifecycle with features like embedded Swagger editor, API mocking, and versions and revisions, which we're going to see in a moment. So API mocking is pretty critical for people who practice design-first approach because it allows them to make API usable without actually implementing it, right? And as such, enable front-end developers to start working on the apps in parallel with the back-end implementation. Version and revision, of course, are critical for managing change. And that has been a huge undertaking for us to actually implement that feature. And I am going to take a few minutes to talk about it because it's quite interesting. It also will help you to understand the demo a little better. So versioning is a highly debated subject, right? The opinion has not been settled on what to do with it. Some people say APIs should be immutable. Some other people say, no, they have to be versioned. And there's various different approaches to do it, one of which is semantic versioning. Seemingly simple question of what constitutes a breaking change is itself a subject of debate. How do you convey version information? Well, there's multiple ways. Each of them has its advantages and disadvantages. What identifies a version? Is it a date? Is it a number, et cetera? So you get the picture, right? A lot of variation. So we kind of took a cop-out approach, right? We basically said, OK, let's leave the hard decisions to the customer, right? We're going to sort of take the easy road of just implementing the mechanisms for them to manage change. And then they can sort of decide on the policy of versioning themselves. And as such, essentially, versioning feature, first of all, is an opt-in. So if you don't want it, you don't use it, it's not in the way. If you start using it, it's a first-class citizen, right? So essentially, on the platform, we understand natively concepts of versions and revisions. And versions and revisions are two buckets we put changes in, right? And they're sort of quite different. Revisions allow you, as an API developer or manager, to release changes at the time of your choosing without disrupting your consumers or API app developers. Where versions allow you to create a sort of a potentially, diverging versions of your API, and their app developers have to opt into using them, right? They don't have really, have to switch, immediately. So just to drive this point home, this is basically an API model we had so far. And as you can see, versioning was implemented by basically, DIY, do it yourself. And essentially, you'll just create a copy of an API, you name it accordingly, et cetera. But API management had no idea that those two APIs are not just random APIs, but really related through a versioning relationship. Now we fixed that. And we also extended the model. Yeah, by the way, and everybody right now is using that model, right? And you can sort of keep using that model. Nothing changes there. But if you want to opt in into versioning, we provide quite a rich set of capabilities for you. First of all, you can see that each API can have multiple versions. Each version can have multiple revisions. Some of those revisions, exactly one per API version, has to be current, right? That's the revision which actually responds to requests at any given moment. Some of the revisions can be online, which means that you can actually test them. They can reach them. They each have specific URL. And those are represented with solid green, and then pale green represents the revisions that are offline. So quite a sophisticated and flexible model, and you can sort of, as you can imagine, and Matt will show you how you can sort of, make change, test it, and then switch that change into production, sort of using revisions. So with that, I'm going to let Matt dazzle you with a demo.
Thanks, Vlad. Can you hear me well? Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. As Vlad said, well, actually in the program, you'll see that this session is being delivered by Vladimir Vinogradsky, and Matt. I want to just point out that this isn't a mistake. As you saw from Jim earlier with the photo, it's all part of my international rebranding as a single name entity. Not a mistake. So what I'm going to show you, this afternoon is some features that are in the product already. I'm just going to help point out how they can be used, and then particularly with this community, what you might do to take advantage of them. And we've also got some new stuff we're going to show you that's coming in the next few weeks and months that should be pretty exciting, and the same versions are part of that. So I'm just going to show you, if you haven't seen it, what the new Azure portal looks like with Azure API Management. If you're using the old publisher portal and you're using the product regularly, please go and give it a look. We've added a whole bunch of new stuff recently. This is going to be where all the new innovation in the product is going to be. So I know it's kind of fun to keep with the things you know and you're familiar with. But if you're using the publisher portals today, please come across and give it a go. We've got some great features that we've added that aren't in the publisher portal, so things like Azure Monitor. So you can now get activity logs for all your instances, and if I scroll down to the bottom, you can get metrics. We're starting to move all the metrics that are in the analytics system in the publisher portal across there now. And you can even do things like set alert rules on things. For example, if the number of errors in your instance increases, set an alert, and it can send you information about that. We do have the preview flag on at the moment, but that's going to go away very, very soon. So please come across and give us your feedback, because we'd love to hear it. But I'm going to go into the APIs blade, which you can see here, which is where the main part of the product is, and is where we're going to do design, and we're going to add a new API today. And of course, we're going to do it with our new friend, Contoso Fitness. And so I'm going to show you an example of something that may apply to your customers, and use Contoso Fitness as an example. So let's just say, for example, that Contoso has an API that they use to talk to their suppliers that helped them in the past to order new supplies of, I don't know, protein shakes and things like that. Let's say they want to make their members able to access that through an API. The problem is, well, they've gone out and the marketing department has found the best agency in London, the coolest, trendiest agency in London to implement a new mobile app for them, so customers can come in and order protein shakes really easily through the app. And then the first day the technical teams met, the technical team showed that agency the SOAP API to order those protein shakes. And the agency looked at them and said, "What's this?" So they don't want to use SOAP, they want to use REST. Do you want to have to build a whole new REST API? Well, no. So we've got a great SOAP to REST feature in here, and I'm just going to show you a bit more, if you've maybe seen it already today, a bit more about how it works and why it's something that you can take advantage of and then modify for your customer situations. So I've got an existing WSDL. There we go. And I'm going to just copy the URL. And what I'm going to do, you can go and see this today when you try it out in the portal, is select a SOAP to REST API. It's going to give me the interfaces that are in that SOAP API, and I'm just going to rename it and call it Contoso Orders. Give it a suffix. And create. Now, what this is going off, oh, typical. There we go. I have one I prepared earlier, so give me one last chance. I don't know why I did that, but let's give it a go. The demo gods are not being kind to me. Luckily, here's one I created earlier. I'm prepared. I don't know quite why that happened. But here's one I prepared earlier. So what happens when you do that is that we go off and we do all the plumbing that is required to take your SOAP-based backend and turn it into a REST front end. Now, that's useful, and yes, there are other ways in which you can do that, but I'm going to show you how we've implemented it, because it's something that then you can go and modify and meet different customer requirements with. So hopefully you're familiar with the policy engine. in Azure API Management. And the policy engine is, we have lots of good comments about this. It's like the Swiss Army knife. It allows you to do all sorts of things to the request-response flow that goes back and forward between your backend and your front-end API. And what we do when we do a SOAP to REST conversion is we're adding a whole bunch of statements to that request-response flow. So let me just expand that out for you. So what we have here is policies that we've created for you as part of that SOAP to REST conversion. It's not a black box. This is something you can go in and modify. All we're doing is effectively creating a wizard that allows you to go and modify this. We're using, those of you who are familiar with Ruby might be familiar with this format, which is liquid. That's now been ported to C#, and we're using it here. Liquid templates. So effectively, what we have here is this SOAP envelope defined. That's text. And in the text, we're doing replacements from the incoming JSON, and we're putting it into the SOAP envelope, and we're sending it to the back end. And similarly, we're doing the same with the XML that comes back from the SOAP backend, and we're turning that into JSON here in the template. We've even got here some stuff for SOAP faults. So if we get SOAP faults back, we're changing those into faults and sending back appropriate HTTP messages. What's really great about this? Well, you can use this templating language to do almost anything you want. So for example, what we could do, this post, it's an HTTP post because all SOAP messages are HTTP posts, but we could change this to an HTTP GET if we wanted to. Benefit of that is we can then do caching really, really easily. Or we can use this format to transform one JSON message to another JSON message if we want to, or an incoming SOAP to an incoming SOAP. It's completely flexible. So again, if you've got like complicated transformation scenarios and things like that with your customer that you're trying to solve, perhaps come and have a look at our templating engine and see whether that helps. And certainly, if you've got SOAP, the customers want to get out there and rest, and you don't want to spend all the time redeveloping, come and have a look at this and see whether it could help you. So a few little things I'm just going to show you here in the new UI that you may not be aware of. We're very much about design first. We want to help you to create that interface of your API with your customers. So one part of that is having the Swagger editor or Open API editor embedded within the interface. It's coming up, so if I expand that out. If any of you have used that, you're probably familiar with it. If you're managing your APIs in API management, you can just come in here and make the changes directly. You don't have to do it in a separate tool. But if we're all about design first, and I'm going to go back to the orders API, one of the things we probably want to do is so let's say our agency, we've done our SOAP to REST conversion, and our agency is moving on very quickly with implementing the app. And then they come back to you one day and say, yeah, where's that status operation we were expecting? We're burning a lot of money per day on this, and we really need this status operation to be able to complete the app. What do? Well, the developers have got, the backend developers have got sidelined onto something else, and you're not going to be able to get to them for a week or two. Is that going to cost you money? Well, what about just adding an operation and mocking it? So I'll show you very quickly how we can do that. I can add in a status operation. Save it. Oops, display name is required. Turning on mocking is as simple as you can go and add a representation if you want to, so it returns the right kind of JSON body. I won't show you that today, but I'll just show you how quickly and easily you can turn on mocking. It's as simple as one button. I can select a response if I want one. Oh, no, I need to set one up, so let's cancel that for a second. I do need to set one up, so here we go. If I go in and edit. Oops, there we go. Oops. Here, so I can set up a response. I can add a 200. Okay. Save, and then, oops. There we go, sorry. Demo gods are not smiling on me today, but we'll push through. So I just need to add an application/JSON response. Oops. It's getting there. There we go. A JSON response, and I can add in something like status. Hold on. We're in Britain, and I'm British, so we'll have a properly British response code. So we'll say something like super lovely. There we go. That's a properly British response. So there we go. We've got our response set up. I now need to go into into the editor. Come on, give me an icon. Set mocking, static responses, select 200. And then we're done. Tells you in the UI that mocking is enabled. Anybody calling that API will get the super lovely response, and your front-end development team are completely unblocked. You can then go and work out when your back-end team are and get them to develop stuff. So those features are there and available today. You can go and try them out. I'm going to show you some new stuff that's in preview. And Vlad talked about versioning and revisions, and I'm going to show you just how that works today. So we've got another API here, which is that Contoso have implemented, which is a fitness calculator. And let's say this has been embedded in one of their apps for a while. But what they want to do is do a completely new fitness calculator. They want to do stuff that helps you calculate BMI, and they're going to throw away most of the operations with the new one. So that means that the new fitness calculator API will probably be completely, it will be incompatible with the previous one. So running two APIs at the same time, the one that you're running now and maybe one that you also want to run for different users or in different use cases, is absolutely what the versions scenario is there to do. Having multiple versions of an API available for your users. So we're going to add a version. And as Vlad said, what we do is we allow you to decide what the best way to version your API is. There's a huge amount of disagreement and differences of opinion, and we certainly found that when we talked to customers about exactly how you should do this. So we allow you to do different things. So path versioning is certainly what a lot of people would choose, but you can also go and do query string versioning. So if I put a value in, you'll see in the URL that's given there the sort of way in which you would call that different version. Same as if I used a header. So I can pass in a header. The point being that your developers have a consistent and reliable way to switch between versions of your API, whether that be header, query, or path. We're going to choose path, and we're going to call it brand new fitness calculator. And go ahead and create it. Okay. And what we see here in the UI, and this is similarly reflected in the developer portal, is the APIs that you have in this version grouping are grouped together to show they have a relationship between them. But the only thing that links them together, they're loosely coupled by that versioning identifier. The APIs themselves are completely yours to change and modify as you wish. So let's go into V2. And then we'll assume we've made all those great big changes, but I'm not going to do it right now. And I'll show you how revisions become part of the story here. So if you go and make changes to your API and API management today, what you'll find is that as soon as you've made those changes, they affect the production callers of your API. Which isn't always ideal. Obviously, a lot of our customers use continuous integration processes to make sure that process is locked down. But there's still always times where you want to be able to make changes in isolation, try them out, before you push them into your production pipeline. So this is the scenario that revisions really helps with. So let's say I want to make changes to V2 here, but I want to do it safely. So I can add a revision. We're just going to say add new operation today. And then you'll see we have this revision selector. up here. So I can choose between the two revisions I've selected. Revision 1, you see this has this kind of connected logo against it. That means it's the one that my production callers are accessing. Revision 2 is just mine to make changes with. So I'll go and add an operation, and we'll call it get status, because that's the one we're missing for our developers earlier on as well. Status. And save that operation. Okay, now just to prove that these are two completely separate APIs, if I go and select revision 1, you'll see it's not there. Revision 2, it is. If I now go to the revisions tab, we can see a history of all the revisions that I've made. And there's a couple of statuses against them. One is current. So the one that is current is the one that's online, the one that the customers are accessing. And there's also this online flag. So the online flag denotes that that API is available at what we call a private URL. And you can obviously turn this off. But let's say that you create your API, it's got all the changes you want in it, and you really just want to try it out on a test client. Well, this is where the private URL goes in, because you can just copy that, paste it into your test client or Postman or something like that, try out your API, be happy that it works before you make it current. Let's assume we've done that. And then what we can do is make this revision current. When we make this revision current, the last concept of revisions kicks in, and that is the public changelog. As you make changes to your API, you may want to tell your customers about those changes, particularly if you've done things like add additional optional parameters, or you've perhaps changed the performance or the way in which an API works, but haven't necessarily made it not backwards compatible. And the public changelog allows you to do that. So I can just make a note here and say added new operation. Save it. That's now making that API current, so public can now call it. And the changelog, which also appears on the developer portal, has had this value updated for it. Final piece of the puzzle. Let's say that you add a new revision and you're making all those changes, and then you finally realize that actually this is going to break everybody, or I'm really not comfortable with this being the next revision that I publish to my customers. You probably want to create a new version so that we can absolutely take a revision and make a version from this revision, call it v3. There we go, just prove it actually worked. And there we go, we have v3, our brand new API that we're allowed to use completely separate from all the previous APIs. So that's versions of revisions, coming soon to an API management instance near you. It's in preview at the moment. One final thing I want to show you that's really cool that we're working on right now. Many of you are familiar with the product, probably have used our log to event hub policy. And what this allows you to do is dip into the request response pipeline and take almost anything out of that pipeline and use it as you will. And lots of our customers use that to do things like custom analytics. So they can use our analytics out of the box, but if you want to take them and add things like details in the request body that we would know nothing about, or make business dashboards, or combine those analytics with other systems, it's a really, really useful tool. And a number of customers have gone all the way to putting it into Power BI dashboards. However, the feedback that we've had is that doing so is pretty tricky. So what we're working on now, and hope to be available to you later on in the summer, is we're building what's called a solution template for API management and Power BI. And what that is going to let you do is you go to a website, it's actually on the Power BI website, you put in a bunch of details about your API management instance, where you want things deployed to, and that will set up things like SQL Server, Event Hub, Stream Analytics, and we're hoping to add potentially some machine learning, bring it all together in a best-of-breed dashboard that shows off the benefits of the Microsoft data platform. And we're going to be, you do that just from a simple website without too much configuration. What you can then do is it's completely yours to modify, change, make fit your own business requirements. So we'd really appreciate you trying that out and giving that feedback when we're ready later on in the summer. So that's all the demo we had. Back to Vlad.
Thank you, Matthew.
right, so final stretch here. So roadmap, please read the fine print. We'd like to be transparent, but this is not exactly a commitment. We just want to sort of make you aware of the thinking that we have about the things that we're going to be working on. We kind of bucketed it roughly into sort of near term, longer term. Again, things may change. Some of these are reflected on our public roadmap, others aren't. We just finished our planning process right before jumping on the plane, so we're going to be updating our roadmap, public roadmap with these things next week. So I'm going to just call out a few. You can just read it. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, by the way. If you don't see something that you're really passionate about, sort of don't worry. Just talk to us. We're going to be here for the next few days. And again, this is just a selection that we put on the slide here. So full support for ARM templates. Again, we want to be absolutely consistent with how you manage services in Azure. So we had ARM support for creation, sort of lifecycle management of the instance itself. Now we're extending it to all the entities and API management. So essentially, that is actually already done. So right now, we're sort of waiting on documentation, and so this is coming out shortly. Capacity metric in Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor is really cool, lots of good information, allows you to understand when something is going wrong with your instance. One thing we were missing is we didn't give you a sort of an ability to understand how loaded is your instance and understand when it's the time to either scale out or scale back. And that capacity metric will allow you to do that, right? So essentially, if you're in pre-production, you want to deploy to production, you can run load tests, you can see what your capacity metric tells you, you can sort of size appropriately, and then you can set sort of alerts on that and revise the scale of your unit, of your instance, based on that metric. Release notification Azure portal will obviously keep you hopefully up to date to all the new releases and capabilities that we're delivering without the need to necessarily go to the blog. We heard feedback about documentation being incomplete, inaccurate, lack of implementation guidance, so we want to definitely give to you the right documentation and right guide so that you can sort of be self-sufficient and make progress quickly without coming with questions to us, et cetera. So we're going to work on that as well. And lastly, the last piece of portal migration will be analytics. So we're working hard on that, and that's coming pretty soon as well. So a little further out, and again, some of these capabilities will be delivered piecemeal, so they will appear over time, but roughly. So Enterprise API Catalog. So today, most of our customers do either use API management either in sort of customer engagement or partner ecosystem scenarios. Essentially, they expose APIs for apps or devices or for partner integration. We're starting to see more customers focus on this, digital transformation I was talking about, and these internal scenarios where people want to sort of have one place for discovery and consumption of APIs in the enterprise and management, of course. And that's where we feel the Enterprise API Catalog sort of fits in. Essentially, we're going to make an investment in developer portal from multiple sort of perspectives. One is we're going to fix what's wrong with it, right? So there are, some of the things that you told us don't work very well for you. For instance, ability to sort of move, configuration from one instance to another. Some other sort of friction points. But also, we need to make it a lot more scalable for large numbers of APIs, right, that enterprises tend to have. So we're going to be introducing new features such as, tags, categories, search. We're going to introduce ability for organizations to manage their subscription efficiently. Right now, each developer sort of has subscriptions. For organizations, really, it's important that subscriptions are owned by organizations or sub-organizations within organizations, and then, we're going to enable that as well. So key vault is a pretty important thing. We had a few lifesite issues with customers where their certificates expired that they were supplying to API management. So using certificates from Key Vault, using capabilities of Key Vault for sort of alerting and renewing certificates will help with that. App Insights is crucial, we believe, for people to use APIs and API management together. They need to be comfortable. It needs to be, they need to have observability, right? They need to understand what is going on. And we feel that App Insights will help you and us with solving that problem. Again, this is one of the services that is increasingly used by our customers, as well as other sort of technologies that you heard about, other services like logic apps and functions, et cetera, are already integrating with App Insight, so are going to. Payload validation is essentially allows you to validate payloads against schemas. So very often, API management is used in conjunction with App Gateway, which serves as a web application firewall. So we're going to sort of continue that, but we also will add capabilities for content validation absent or impossible in App Gateway to API management. And then, of course, the very interesting one that we are very excited about is, again, about intelligence, right? We are working with machine learning folks at Microsoft to see if we can bring some of their capabilities to API management, where you get alerted about some operational and security anomalies in the system. This is early days, but this is something that we're definitely looking forward to do. China and US government regions are really important. I think we sort of feel that it will unlock more customers for API management, and these are important markets for us, so we're going to do that. And lastly, of course, Open API Specification version 3. As you know, Microsoft is one of the core members of Open API Initiative. One of the engineers on our team is one of the maybe 5 core contributors to the spec. So we feel it's very important for us to sort of be on top of that and deliver you a better spec support sooner. So lastly, I want to close with asking you to provide feedback and keep us sort of observe our progress and keep in touch with us on user voice, our roadmap, the blog. I want to call out the last 2 links, policy examples. On customer request, we actually released a repository with some samples of advanced policy usage. So we definitely invite you to take advantage of that resource. But also, if you have interesting policy scenarios that you implemented, please share by submitting PR to that repo, and we will be happy to accept them. Last one is, especially if you are a customer who hasn't been hands-on with API management, or a partner who has customers who are interested in API management, these CAD labs were developed by a person named Shane Peckham. He is a solution specialist in Microsoft UK. So these labs are absolutely awesome, easy to follow, and very informative. And they'll showcase not just API management, but really use of API management with app service, logic apps, the whole ecosystem, right? So you'll run through an example and you will understand and will be able to sort of learn hands-on firsthand. So with that, thank you very much for being a patient and attentive audience, and we'll see you later at the reception.